Hello there, girls and boys. Hey, so generally I do these lives in the Facebook group. There's a Facebook group called Free and Empowered, and you can find the link to that group in the description of this video. But today I decided to do this on YouTube, just for the heck of it. I have what I consider to be a really important message for you today. Okay, it's actually a question. It's a pretty deep question, and then we're going to talk about how this question is more important than maybe you've even realized. So the deep question is, what is the purpose of your life? Yeah, what is the purpose of life? Now, is it necessary for us to have a purpose for the things that we do? When you're eating, do you have a purpose for that moment, for that food? Do you have a specific objective in your romantic relationships? Do you have a specific objective in your career? When you're dealing with your finances, what is your specific goal? When you're exercising, what's your goal? What's your goal when you wake up? Now, these may seem like pretty deep questions, but the thing is, something is going to determine what your goal is for you. And it's either going to be determined in a conscious way, because you chose, you analyzed what was important for you. You went through a process of self-discovery, and you discovered what your values are and which sort of things you want to create and generate for yourself in your life before you die. So when you're clear on the sorts of things that you want to feel and experience in your life, then you can consciously choose the objective behind all of your actions. But if you don't go through this process of getting to know yourself and getting to know what you want to do and what you want the purpose of your life to be, then something else is gonna choose the objectives behind the things you do, and that something else is your programming. Now, the problem with our programming, just drink some water here, is that if you suffered trauma, then you have some pretty crappy programming. And your programming might decide some things that are pretty like self-sabotaging. And you might not realize that you're making all sorts of really poor decisions in different areas of your life because it's your programming that's deciding the objectives behind the things you do. And I'm going to give you some concrete examples so you can see how this works. So for example, let's say you never stop to ask yourself what your objective is in your social relationships. Well, you might have trauma in that area, when it comes to establishing bonds with other people. And it might just be that your trauma decides subconsciously that the purpose of those relationships is to avoid pain. And so trauma might tell you to isolate yourself. Trauma might tell you to not open up. Trauma might tell you to never let anyone get close. Trauma might tell you when someone does something that you don't like in a relationship, even when it's someone that you love and that you know wishes you well and that's rooting for you. Trauma might tell you that the purpose of that relationship is to avoid pain. And so you need to attack that person and you need to be aggressive and rude to them. And trauma is going to make all of these decisions for you. And then you find yourself more and more isolated, more and more unhappy, and disbelieving that relationships are even worth it at all. Now, if you've suffered this trauma, and you've actually gone through a process of figuring out the things that are wrong in your life, the wrong decisions that you're making, and also what direction you want to go in, if you actually have like a clear statement in your mind that demonstrates what the purpose of your relationships are, you might consciously decide something like this. I decide that the purpose of my relationships is to love and be loved in an environment where I can be myself and I can evolve alongside with the person and vice versa. The purpose of the relationship is for us to feel safe being ourselves. That means that the relationship isn't going to fall apart just because we're angry or just because we don't see eye to eye for a moment. Now, when I have that very, very clearly in my mind, then I'm not going to isolate myself just because I'm like hurt or I'm going through a tough time, because I know that I have a purpose for creating healthy relationships. And when I abandon the people in my life and I'm not in touch with them, then I'm not really creating what I decided was important for me. Or when I want to like tell someone off or treat someone in a certain way because, I don't know, I was upset or I just like having an emotional tantrum or whatever. If I have a purpose of having a relationship that is so stable and loving we even allow each other to, me and the other person in the relationship, we even allow each other to get angry and to be upset because we know that this is not going to mean the end of the relationship. Then I'm going to have like all of this behavior that's going to be different in terms of how I talk to people, in terms of how I manage my pain, in terms of what I think I have the right to do with that person or not. Because I'm going to have a clear objective in my mind to create a relationship where there is equality, where both sides feel safe. So you can see how when you let your trauma decide things for you, you can make some very poor decisions that will generate even more pain. But when you consciously decide what the purpose of something is for you, it becomes easier to choose which attitudes you're going to have, which people you're going to keep in your life, which people you're going to exclude from your life. Another example. We talked about something like relationships, which is like a big thing. Let's talk about food, though. Even eating needs to have a purpose. So, for example, if you never stopped and actually asked yourself, what is the purpose with the food in your life? Trauma might decide what the purpose of food is. And trauma generally decides along the lines of, I want to avoid pain. And then trauma is going to make some decisions in that direction of avoiding pain. But generally that interpretation of how to avoid pain was made when you were much younger and you weren't very developed cognitively speaking and emotionally speaking. And oftentimes you're still reacting like that wounded child that created that limiting belief in the first place. So as an adult, you might have a very infantile relationship with food because trauma might decide that the purpose of food is to fill your inner void. And then you might like literally fill your inner void with food. You might binge eat, or if trauma decides that you want to avoid pain and that's the purpose of food, you might do obsessive dieting because all of these obsessive compulsive repetitive behavior are ways of us feeling that we're in control because we actually feel that we're not in control, or we're reliving some memories from a time in our lives where we felt like we had no power, or that our power was not validated, or that we were made fun of because we wanted to make our own decisions, express our own opinions, develop in a way that made sense to us and was spontaneous to us. So if trauma decides what the purpose of food is for you, you might make all of these poor decisions and have all of these weird behavior regarding food. But you might very consciously decide what the purpose of food is. And this actually happened in my life a few years back, and I'd like to share this story briefly for you to see how much of a difference it makes for you to actually think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I'm a pole dancer, and I've competed in a pole dance tournament, just one. But I remember that when I started training for this championship, pole dancing actually involves a lot of training. It's very much like rhythmic gymnastics. So it's like 5 to 7 hours of training, and it's super hard. And it's simply, I realized that what I was eating back then wasn't adequate for the level of stress that I was putting on my body. So I actually went through like this 2-year process where I was acquiring a new lifestyle, creating a new lifestyle, and where I asked myself what the purpose of food was. And I actually came up with a sentence. I actually researched, I started following lots of people online that talked about nutrition and food and athletics and stuff. I talked to professionals and I came up with my own little objective. And I realized that the purpose of food for me was to create a lifestyle that was so automated that all of my basic needs were met without any effort on my part. So I actually went through this 2-year process where I learned how to feed myself, and I learned which attitudes and which foods and how frequently I should eat in order to satisfy the needs that I put on a list, and they were very specific needs. So for example, I needed to take care of my athletic needs. If you're training 5 to 7 hours a day, you have to eat various times a day, and you can't just like not eat, skip a meal. That's not even a possibility. So, I prepared, I did my meal prepping and all of that because I knew that if I skipped a meal, this was going to be detrimental to my athletic needs. I also decided that one of my purposes was to have ease in making the meals So once I studied and I realized that, a healthy plate of a healthy dish is going to basically involve some carbs, and I decided those would be whole complex carbs in my situation, some micronutrients. So there's always got to be a part of the meal that's got those micronutrients. It's the veggies. And then I need my protein, and I'm a vegetarian, so the protein is going to be the beans, the lentils, the eggs, whatever. Another objective that I have behind what I eat is that I have great skin, but automatically. I used to have really bad adult acne, and I didn't realize that I had it because of what I was eating. And so I realized that if I cut down on processed foods and I just drink a lot of good water, and this is medicinal water that you guys see me drinking all the time, and it's great, it makes such a difference. And also, if I had lots of veggies and I didn't have the processed foods, I realized that I could have the skin that I wanted. So having all of these specific little objectives that I want to actually meet, to create in my life, it's very easy on a moment-by-moment basis to decide which sort of behaviors I'm going to allow myself to have and for how much time, and which sort of behaviors are just not going to be part of my life. So for example, I can totally eat some pizza and have some Coke once a week or something like that, because that's okay. I still can reach my goals, but I can't be doing that every day, because then I'm not reaching my goals. So you see that there are many advantages to deciding beforehand, to go through the process of getting to know yourself enough so you know what it is that you actually want to create in each and every area of your life. And the advantages are, number one, it's a hell of a lot easier to make decisions. Once you know that this is what you want, and you know what this looks like, and you know why you want this, then you can easily analyze whether your attitudes, your mental attitudes and your actions are going to take you there or not. And it's easier to let go of some attitudes because you know where you're heading and you know that that's important to you. So it's easier to make decisions. It's also a hell of a lot easier to understand why you're feeling such heavy things inside. And I like to summarize the negative emotions using that expression, heaviness, the heavy emotions. Because there's many names for different negative emotions. Maybe what you're feeling is loneliness. Maybe it's apathy. Maybe it's resentment. Maybe it's sadness. Maybe it's disconnection. Whatever it is, it's heavy. You don't want to carry it. And you will find that sensations like that inner void that's so common, or confusion, indecision about your next step, or, of course, lack of purpose in life, you will find that these things are actually a reflex of you never having consciously chosen what the heck you want to do with your time on planet Earth, And it becomes so much easier to understand why you're feeling the inner void or confusion, indecision, or lack of purpose when you've gone through the process of defining what your purpose is. All right? So just out of curiosity, my purpose in life is to reach my highest level of self-actualization by satisfying all my desires and being a source of light wherever I go. So it's a prerequisite for me that I be a source of light for other people wherever I go, because this is part of my life purpose. So if I'm angry and I'm walking into a coffee shop and someone's going to be serving me some coffee, I know I can't treat that person in an angry manner because it's part of my life purpose to be light wherever I go. Do you understand? So if I want to choose something that I'm going to do professionally to make money, I know that there's a prerequisite in my life purpose where whatever it is that I do, it needs to bring light to other people. So I'm just not going to choose certain things that aren't going to generate that light for me and for other people. You see how much easier things become? And then you can just, choose things and align everything in your life according to your goal. So I would like to end this video asking you those deep questions. What's your life purpose? Why do you wake up every day? When you imagine yourself on your deathbed, surrounded by the people who love you, and you know you're about to leave planet Earth, what sort of experiences do you want to have had? What sort of sensations do you want to have generated within you and also in the lives of people that you love? What sort of relationships do you want to have created? What sort of things do you want to have done? What do you want to do, create, and experience before you die? What is your life purpose? And I also want to ask you about other areas in your life. When it comes to your diet, what's your purpose with the food you eat? Why do you eat what you eat? What are you trying to reach? In your romantic relationships, what's the purpose behind you having a romantic relationship in the first place? In your friendships, what is the purpose in your friendships? In when it comes to your financial situation, what goals are you trying to achieve specifically when it comes to your finances? So let me know if any of these questions set off some bells in your mind, if there's any insights, if you had any sort of like positive aha moments or anything you want to share in the comments below. I love reading your guys' comments. It really helps me know what sort of videos to make so I can help you the most as well. And also, I'd like to talk about my mailing list. There's a link in the description of this video. I have a mailing list where I share little tidbits of wisdom and directly in your inbox, and you can get some exclusive content from me there, as well as you can also know when my next workshops are for daughters and sons of narcissistic mothers, and also inquire about my one-on-one coaching services. So let me know if you liked the video. If you did like it, then like it. If you think that maybe it can be useful to someone else, make sure you share. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep on talking about this sort of subject. And of course, subscribe to my mailing list. Thank you very much for today. And that is it. See you next time.